What are you doing? What are you doing? Peaches. We've got a delivery, guys. So I am at home by myself. It is the middle of the day. Well, it's 9:46 in the morning, but we have a Bugs for Bugs delivery. I have 30,000 Capricornus, I think it is. Capricornus, I'll put the species name up, but 30,000 of these little beneficial mites to release into the collection. Release the hounds, guys, and take out spider mites because I keep finding them everywhere. And it doesn't seem to matter how many times I put things in the shower, spray the crap out of them with insecticide. Within a few weeks, they're back on another plant elsewhere. And it's just this cycle at the moment. So I'm gonna have to take it easy on the insecticides for the next month or so. But hopefully 30,000 of these little buggers will get into the collection and just wipe the place out. Just clean it out. I'll be pissed if not, but fingers crossed. Okay, so we've started out here with this living room collection. This is effectively all that remains in the living room, and a few things up on the kitchen island there. Forget the rubbish there. I will take that out today. Kel, I'm sorry, my beautiful wife, it will be done, don't panic. And there are some plants over here too. We are being liberal, guys. That is the name of the game today. There is sawdust going all over the place because these mites need to do their magic and take everything out. Take it out. It's time to take out the trash, Pete. It's time to take out the trash. All right, I'm gonna need more hands. So we've got the other two. Sorry, guys. We've got the other two. My God, I'm having a brain fart. Capsules. Capsules is what I want to say. So, right, they come in these things. I've just done one, and I'm gonna do one in my office here. Yes, it's overcrowded at the moment. I've sort of been using it as storage. This is the Anthurium cabinet. And I've also recently gotten into another area of plants. Ugh, man, cacti. Jeez, what an untapped area of potential interest for me. So we'll be doing one here, and then we'll be doing one in the plant room as well. Guys, we found our first little hotspot right here on this propagation. I am not surprised. This guy had it in the past, but yeah, he has just been delivered one hot dose of Californicus. So kiss your asses goodbye, little mites. Ooh, second little hotspot here, guys, on the Glorious. So I have also made sure that this guy gets pounded as well, gets given the treatment, and even gets the cylinder. So fingers crossed we're gonna wipe these bastards out. And I gotta tell you guys, you know what absolutely warms my heart? Finding these little jumping spiders in my collection. Because I know that they are harvesting the souls of fungus gnats. Come on, mate, up in your spot. No? Come on, puss puss. You're a funny girl. G'day guys, what's going on? Welcome to this episode of Pete vs. Plants. I am Pete, this is Peaches. Ow! Let go! Peaches, get out. And these are the plants. So today we've got a bunch of chores to get through, and I thought I would bring you along for the journey. We have a whole bunch of Alocasias that we're going to hopefully combine together. And I have an Albo cutting here that has been propagating away in the Ziploc bag method. And we also have some Springtails in here that we're going to propagate. I wonder if you can see them hopping about, springing around. So without any further ado, guys, let's get into it. So I guess to begin, we'll start with the scalprums. And the story is, I've got a whole bunch of these. I actually have another pot of them as well. But I have these four, and they're all sort of the same size, right? They're all relatively young, one-leaf plants, three of which are shooting out their second leaves. But I'm thinking that it's kind of taking up a bit too much space, and I want to combine them together because I am chasing a thick, bushy scalprum, aren't we all? So I was debating just leaving it in semi-hydro, but I think I might chuck it back into chunky mix and dive back into those tumultuous waters again and see if I can brave the tempest that is alocasias in soil and get these guys to survive. I have a feeling if I have chunky mix, they should do okay. The only thing that I'm sort of unsure about is these ones going from leca into this, but yeah, wish me luck. Now, I had these guys propagating in sphagnum moss. I am leaning further and further away from doing that with most other aeroids because it is just a total pain in the butt to separate them out from the moss when you want to. But as I mentioned in a previous video, the alocasias tend to be pretty easy when it comes to separating their roots from moss. I think just based on the root morphology, they tend to just come straight out a lot more easily, whereas other things like Monstera, philodendron, they seem to just grip onto the moss a great deal more. But yeah, I think, which one was it? It was the Alocasia stingray that I found that with. When I had them in moss, I thought, oh man, they're sitting in this prop box. Alocasia stingray? It may have been the pink dragon alocasias. And I thought, oh man, these are going to be so hard to separate out from the moss. But it turned out that they were easy as, and all I really had to do was give a sort of light tug on the moss, and it tended to separate away pretty easily. Now, I have pre-soaked these to make my life a little easier because separation of moss from plants is definitely a hell of a lot easier when the moss is thoroughly damp, when it is moist moss. So yeah, as you can probably see, peaches, oi, oi, don't eat it. Jesus Christ. Pretty much every plant in this house is poisonous. Don't eat them. As you can see, the moss is coming away pretty quickly. Hey, hey, you eating the spider plant? Get out of it. Get out of it, Peaches. Jeez, she's taking some chunks off it. Hopefully the spider plant should be all right. I'll have to look that up, but the other ones aren't. I need to get a leash or a little halty or something that I can take her on walks with because she is an indoor cat. Australians are pretty... Peaches, get out of it. You coming back? You better leave that plant alone. Peaches. There you go, you can have a front row seat to the video instead. Australians are pretty used to keeping their cats indoors because we have so much unique wildlife that it's kind of a big no-no. It's frowned upon to allow your cats to kind of just go out and about and do whatever, whenever. Because, yeah, I think there have been studies done and it's like billions of native animals a year in Australia are killed by domestic cats or feral cats. So, yeah, big no-no here. If you live in Australia and you let your cat out and about, what are you doing? What are you doing? They should be monitored at all times. Anyway, as you can see, that was pretty easy to get the moss off. So yeah, it confirms my suspicion that alocasias tend to have pretty, I don't know, what would you say, non-grippy, ungrippy roots, if that makes sense, that are just easier to get off the moss or to get the moss off the alocasia. We have two in here, but one of them has done nothing. So one of them was actually the base of a plant. Actually, you know what? This whole time I have thought that this base of the plant was doing nothing, but it looks like what's actually happened is that it has shot out this growth point from the side. So there you go. I guess that goes to show that you can activate and, propagate alocasias that way, even off the main stem. So I hadn't actually really thought about that, to be honest. I hadn't realized that if you chop the top off it, it could potentially activate an axillary bud on the side of the plant that would then shoot out growth. I was just totally expecting with the alocasia that I had cut leaves off before, the growth tended to come straight up the middle again, out the top of the plant. So yeah, this whole time I've been looking at this thinking, why isn't it doing anything? But lo and behold, it had been doing something the entire time. So good stuff. All right, we're making quick work of the moss. Pinches off again. Looking for more plants to eat. It's like, how are you all of a sudden a plant fiend when I just moved all the plants away from here? Like you never touched them before, but now all of a sudden you're interested? Now that you don't have access to them? Guess you always want the things you can't have, huh? All right, so these ones in leca. Now this is going to be a little messy. I think what I might do with these guys is actually pour this into the sink so that I can then give the leca a rinse, boil it, and put it back into my leca box. And then I'll bring these guys out too. I might give their roots a rinse too. So back in a tick. So that was pretty easy. Now I do have quite a sort of Medusa bird's nest of a root system here, and I kind of don't want to dig in too deep and start tearing up the roots just to get the leca out. So I may just leave the leca in there, to be honest, as it's going to add a bit of aeration to the soil mix anyway. So yeah, that's the thinking. But yeah, as you can see, these were actually from the base of 2 other plants, and you can see the growth has come out of the top of each of these. And so yeah, I guess we're just going to bunch these guys together. And I'm not sure, do you have all the leaves facing the same way? You know, they're going to end up doing that anyway. Or do you have them facing all different directions? All right, and now the last thing is to work out, do I use my chunky mix or do I use my sort of thinner, less dense mix? Because the plants that have been sitting in leca probably need a little bit more moisture retention. So I may, in fact, mix a bit of both together. So I'm going to take some of my lighter aeroid mix here, and I'm just going to mix it in with my heavier stuff on the side here. And sorry, you can't really see this. Just take my word for it. And I'm going to, there we go, pot it up. That soil is very dry. Oh, a bit of dust. And yes, try and arrange these guys nicely. There we go. And then fill her in. Okay, so here are the plants all sitting up nicely. Now I'm just going to, this one a bit of a nudge, try and arrange them nicely. And then give everything a bit of a squeeze to make sure that all the soil has kind of worked its way into all the gaps. Might bring this guy back to the middle a bit. Some soil around the front again. And I think this is going to work nicely. Hold on a second. Get down a little further. Sweet, so there we are on our way to a very thick, luscious scalprum bush. I think this is going to do pretty well. It's kind of an intermediate mix here. I've used my chunky mix, but I've mixed it in with my lighter area sort of seedling mix. I think it's going to do all right. I'll just have to keep an eye on the watering and make sure that it doesn't get overwatered, but it also doesn't get underwatered. You have to really find that balance. Underwatering ends up leaving the leaves looking a little worse for wear, and they end up sort of drooping down, and overwatering tends to rot the crap out of the roots. So Alocasia scalprum, done and dusted. So I'll put you over there for now. Now the next one is my Alocasia melo that I have here. I have this big plant that I got the other day. I got this from Bunnings for like $15. I remember I saw it there and was just like, what? What a steal. But it has been in very, very chunky soil. And this is actually where I got my little colony of springtails from. I noticed when I bought this that there were loads of springtails just sort of hopping around on the top of the soil here. So I think what I'm going to do is actually save this soil for when I double my springtail population, or at least boxes, right? So I'm gonna, oh, loads of corms here. Sweet, we're corm hunting as well, guys. So I'm gonna propagate that box out so that I've got another population of springtails, and I have a use for them later, which I might talk a little bit about. But that is the goal. Man, there are corms galore here. Awesome. Gotta love a mellow corm. Or 2, or 5, or 10. Hopefully I'm not leaving any in the mix here at the bottom. And can I see any springtails? No, I can't. So they must have just sort of been on the top when I first got this plant. But it was pretty cool. It was a sort of spontaneous, serendipitous find when I went into Bunnings and found this guy just in a decorative pot as sort of a bonus, and was just like, well, I don't want the pot. So I just took him out, and he was $15. So what a deal. These guys were going for quite a bit more only a short time ago. Another corm here. Oh, look, and it already has roots. Isn't that beautiful? So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 already. Now, I might give this guy a quick rinse to get as much of this soil off as possible. And then we will be back. I think that is all corm-wise. And I don't think I've missed any. Otherwise the springtails are going to make quick work of it. And that's sort of the perfect amount of soil as well. Wow, what a winner. All right, so I think we're just going to use a smaller pot like this. So I'm going to do the same as before. I'm going to mix in some of my finer soil with my chunky soil because I do want a little more moisture held in there for these guys. I find that, yeah, otherwise they dry out way too quickly and I miss it and the leaves go to crap. So that's my thinking. Now I have 2 mellow corms here as well that have both popped. And so I would like to pot these guys up alongside the main one. Just again, get a bushy mellow. That'd be just great. That'd be tops. There we go. Look at that. Little guy there. Boom. And this guy might even have a smaller root system. He hasn't even pushed out a leaf yet. You just shake you off. Oh, you've got a decent root system. That's okay. It's okay indeed. Again, the moss is coming off much easier than with Monstera or philodendron. Just sort of drops off, slides off. So there we go. There's that one too. So what I'm going to do is probably put these guys on the sort of opposite side here. These are all under grow lights, so I think they'll have light coming down from the top. And hopefully that means that it won't be overshadowed too much by these other leaves. And hopefully I can position these to then chuck the soil in. All right, back in a tick. Okay. There we go. Hopefully the little one down the side here isn't going to get too lost. It should be able to push out its leaf and do okay. So I've got to put these tags in too before I forget. But there we go. So at least 3 mellows in that one. And we are going to end up hopefully with a load more, at least another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these guys. So there are the corms as well, and I'll probably just propagate these in a prop box again because it's just set and forget. You don't have to really think about it, you just chuck them in there, leave it and come back later. Okay, whilst we're still on plants, I propagated this a while back and I'll leave the video up above on how to propagate Monstera, Albo, deliciosas, but I used the method that I learnt from Hakuna La Planta, where he chucks these in a Ziploc bag with moss and then just kind of leaves them. So it's kind of like you've created a little prop box around the plant using a Ziploc bag like this, and you pretty much just have to water it once and then come back to it later on. And so yeah, that's what I have done. And I'm just having a look to see, this thing hasn't actually started pushing out a growth point yet, but its root system has definitely developed. Now, the moss is a little dry, so I think I'm going to wet this, and that's going to make it a little easier to separate it out. Back in a tick. This was definitely going to be a weird one because what ended up happening somehow is that I had air layered this on the plant, and the root had actually grown kind of like around the entire stem. And so it makes it sort of very difficult to work out how you want to plant it. But I think fortunately, all of the root growth is now further along that initial aerial root that it won't matter if a little bit of it is exposed above the soil. It should do just fine. Okay. So again, I'm doing this just sort of a little more gently than I did with the alocasias, because quite often it does grip onto the roots a little more, and if you're a little more vicious, a little more rigorous, you may have a little bit of root damage that you don't necessarily want. Any root damage that you can avoid is good news. It'll be really interesting to see how this goes if it sort of hits the ground running once it's chucked in soil, because I imagine there isn't a great deal of nutrients just sitting in the moss. I don't know, you guys tell me if I'm wrong, But once it starts getting watered with fertilizer, it's probably going to love life and just take off. And I have noticed that all the other propagations have popped and are already pushing out growth. So yeah, and you'll have to let me know. I will tell you guys, if you want to buy any of these plants, send me a message and I'll sort you out a deal, because I am probably needing to size down quite a bit. And I know that a lot of you guys want to get your hands on these sorts of plants. And you know, it's always good to have seen the plant, see how it was propagated, see the plant that it came from, and obviously get to know the person who's selling it to you. So if you are interested in buying any of these plants that I show you, some of them aren't necessarily for sale, but you can always ask. Just shoot me a message on Instagram or leave me a comment. But just remember, the only thing I have to tell you is that you've got to be in Australia and I need you to be in the quarantine-free states. So I think that means any state besides Tasmania, Western Australia and the Northern Territory, because you have to organise quarantine and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, I'm just not going to do that. Unless you've got it all done and dusted and all I have to do is send you the plant. I can't do that, unfortunately. All right, we're getting there. But you'll see how much more of the moss is just sort of stuck to it. And I think too, at least with Monstera, the deal is probably that there's a lot more root hair growth that happens, and it just latches on to any of the little pieces of moss that are out there, because that's what you'll notice are on these roots too. It's not the long stringy stuff, so you won't see as much of these bits, although there are, you know, some initially on here. Now it's just all these little pieces that are kind of intertwined with the hair on the roots, and it becomes a real pain in the butt to try and separate them out. You know, you could spend hours here with tweezers trying to do it, and you're probably just going to end up causing more damage than you are going to clean the roots. So the interesting thing is, and I don't know why this is, but the axillary bud is there. You can see that it's nice and marbled. So that means that when it shoots out, it should give me leaves that look like this. That wasn't a surprise. This whole plant was marbled like this. So it was very unlikely that you would get a leaf coming out that was pure white or pure green. You're not going to have it revert or just fully ghost on you unless you have plants that have very, very chunky sectoral variegation that is kind of just one or the other, right? Either green or white. But yeah, it hasn't activated. And I wonder if that's because there hasn't been light exposed. It hasn't been exposed to light. It's been in that bag with moss all around it. So I was expecting there to be a growth point. The other ones have ones that are up to this long, and they were all taken at the same point, so at the same time. So I'm not sure what the deal is. Some of these sometimes just take longer than others, so it could just be that, but it also may be something to do with light exposure, which may be related to the hormones that are created and sent out by the plant, which then in turn causes the node to activate or not. So because of this limited root system, it's good. It's this initial root here, and then we've got all of these secondary roots that have just come off, which is great. Means it can be potted up. But because it's not very big, I'm going to chuck it in a smaller pot like so, or should I? The roots are quite long, so I'm sort of thinking, do I chuck it in here? Yeah, this is enough. I was watching something recently where a guy was saying, and he was a cactus kind of expert, and I got into cacti recently. Don't tell anyone, don't hold it against me. But he was saying when you pot plants up, you should always make sure that the roots are sitting vertically in the pot, because auxin travels with gravity apparently up and down the roots like this. And so if you have the roots sitting sideways, it can affect the hormonal movement through the roots. I don't know that much about this sort of stuff, but it was an interesting point because yeah, obviously if you chuck this in a larger pot like this and the roots are sitting just mostly vertical, it's going to be different than, say, putting it in a pot like that and kind of squashing them down and having them sitting sideways and, you know, horizontal like that in places. But that said, I've done that plenty of times and the plants are fine, so yeah. So I'm going to use the chunky mix here. Chunky Monstera roots tend to love that. They don't mind being on the drier side too, so if they do sort of dry out a little bit between waterings, it tends to be fine. The leaves will quite often wilt a little bit before anything bad happens. I've noticed, at least with the green Monsteras and the Albos. Thai constellations and your aureas will brown up like sons of bitches, but these guys tend to do okay, and you sort of have heaps of time. They can dry out for probably 3-4 days, maybe to the point of being bone dry, and then you can water them and they'll come back. So yeah, anyway, it's good like this. I love having the roots close to the outside of the pot so I can see what's going on. And I also, I'm just going to chuck some soil here. I also need to work out where the growth point is, because what I do want is it to be able to come out and come up. It doesn't have to necessarily be facing exactly vertically. So you'll see here on the side, that's where the growth point is. But if it's sitting sideways like that, as opposed to say like this, where it's pointing downwards, the growth will activate and it'll pretty much straight away just do a right-hand turn, you know, or right-hand turn, whatever, you know what I mean. It'll start turning upwards. So I'm just gonna have it sitting like that. And the other thing I'm constantly trying to be aware of is space. So I try and situate now the leaves directly above the pots, as opposed to say sitting on the side of the pot, just to make my life a little easier when putting these guys on the shelves. Otherwise it turns out to be a bit of a pain in the butt. Okay, so that's good. So I've sort of overfilled it a bit, but what you will see me do now is the tap and trick. We'll give it a bit of a pepper. You'll see all that coming out. Now I think I am gonna have to stake this guy because he is a little bit wobbly. I need this guy. I can see some big air pockets down the bottom there, and I kind of want to fill them up with soil. Just again to maximize the amount of soil in the pot, to hold on to moisture for as long as possible so that it doesn't dry out as fast. Okay, so I've got all the sides there. I've just dusted some of the finer stuff on top. That'll wash through. And the other thing, if you are sort of worried about desiccation, drying out of this root, what you can do is just take a bit of that moss and again, just kind of plonk it on the top around, oh, there's a corm right there. I guess that was a melo. You can plonk it around the root to just sort of give it a bit of an extra covering there to hold in a bit more moisture. You can do it over the entire surface if you want. You just need to make sure that the growth point is going to be able to come out. So you'll see it sitting in here now. So yeah, there we go. That's all she wrote for that one. But yeah, if you guys want to purchase this one, let me know and I'll hook you up and send it to you. So we've got a shitload of moss. I'm probably going to save that and chuck that in a prop box. I don't really like wasting moss, even if I've used it for other things. And to be honest, I haven't had any issues yet. I've recycled moss probably 2 or 3 times from different little projects now, and I haven't had any fungus issues or rotting issues really since I began. The issue I had when I first started making prop boxes was that I was making the moss way too moist, so it would have been like that in terms of moisture, but you'll see, this is because I wet it to take it off the roots, right? You want it to be, you want to crush it literally as hard as you can. I try and get out as much as I can with my fist, and then obviously air that moss out. So I'm just going to sprinkle it here. And then that is the kind of moisture amount that you kind of want in here, the dampness that you want in the moss. So when I was first making prop boxes, the moss was way too wet, and I was getting mildew and fungus that was growing in there, and it was sort of eating some of the propagations or covering them up at times, which isn't what you want, right? It's not ideal. So anyway, that was a little bit of knowledge that I learnt pretty quickly the hard way. Okay, so while I have really filthy hands, I guess we can get into these guys, and you're gonna see there are just loads of them. See the white in here? Those are all Springtails, and effectively all I did, these guys are beneficial insects, well, not insects, I think they'd be arthropods, I'm not sure, I'll have to should have Googled that, but I'll put it up on screen. Either way, they are invertebrates that live in the soil and they eat all of the kind of detritus material in there, right? All of the organic matter that's rotting. The reason I like these is because they're going to take out fungi, they're going to take out fungus gnats, or at least compete with them directly for a food source. So I've been propagating this up because I would like to kind of just sprinkle these into all of my pots if I do have a fungus gnat outbreak. And this was free to do. I effectively found that melo. I saw that there were a whole bunch of them on top. I think I took a spoon, although this is a fork, and just put, I think it was like 2 or 3 spoonfuls of that soil in here. I then just used some soil mix, added that in, and then chucked in some veggie scraps and that has pretty much been it. I think I've put, this is a rice cracker. I've put a rice cracker in there twice since, and it's been about 3 months, and the population has exploded. So there were probably, I don't know, 50 to 100 when I first started, and now every single square inch of the soil in here has these little dudes just running around going ballistic. So anyway, all I really need to do here, I don't necessarily need to partition out half the soil. I just need to make sure that there's kind of a few dozen that get in here, and within a month or two, it'll be looking like this in terms of, you know, density. Now, these guys do jump around a ton, so I kind of don't want to take the lid off the whole way, so I may not even use a fork. And it's an old fork. It's one that I don't actually use for eating, so don't worry, guys. But what I might do is just try and open this up slightly and then sprinkle a bit of the dirt out with these guys in it. There we go. Just that much. Seal it back up. Woof, they're jumping everywhere. And voila, there we go. We have a second springtail farm, population, whatever you want to call it, set up. This is the dense soil that came from the melo. It may not have a lot of organic material in it, so what I will do later is probably sneak some veggies or food scraps, whatever in there. Probably don't use meat. It'll just stink the place up. They probably would eat it, but it'll just stink the place up, and it's also going to probably make the soil a bit putrid. So yeah, chuck some veggies in there, some rice, some carbs, whatever you want to sort of feed your little springtails on. You know, if you're a vegan, then I don't know, put sand in there or something. But that was a joke, guys. Vegans don't come for me. I was kidding. I was trying to include you. But yeah, so the goal with those is going to be chuck them into the soil of any of my plants if I see a fungus gnat issue in the future. Or I might just do it anyway because it's going to be good soil health, right? It's going to help break down that organic matter that's in there and sort of get the bacteria and the fungus utilizing that. I've got mycorrhizal fungus that I am inoculating a lot of my plants with, so they're going to be pulling out nutrients to give to the plant in exchange for carbohydrates. But also I'm thinking that I want to start doing some more seedlings, and in particular I've kind of gotten into cacti, guys. I think I mentioned that, right? And so I've ordered a bunch of cacti seed and I'm wanting to grow those from seed, but I've seen that a common issue is algae and fungus when growing cacti seed out. And so I want some of these guys to be able to put in there if that becomes a problem so that they can hopefully at least deal with the fungus issue. Anyway, guys, that's it for today. Thank you so much for joining me. Check out this video next and I'll see you on the next one. Peace. Peaches, where are you? Peaches? What's this? You gonna say ciao? You gonna say see ya? She's so frisky, guys. Tell you what, she's frisky as this little cat. She does not like being held, but she likes being patted. Go figure. But yeah, I can't believe she ate that plant. God damn it. My spider plant is no longer immaculate. Anyway, see ya.